So there's this classic fable called The Deer and His Image, and it asks a really sharp question about how we see ourselves. On the surface, it's a simple little story, but its lesson about what we choose to value, what we praise versus what we just dismiss in ourselves, well, it's maybe more relevant today than ever before. So let's dive in and unpack its surprisingly deep message.
You know, this story really makes you ask yourself a fundamental question. What's actually more valuable? Is it our appearance, the polished image we're so proud to show off, or is it our abilities, those skills that are often hidden, maybe a little less glamorous, but that actually help us get through life? Keep that question in your mind as we meet our main character.
All right, so our story kicks off in a peaceful forest, and right at the center of it is a deer, who is, to put it lightly, his own biggest fan. He literally spends his days just admiring his reflection in a pool of water, totally captivated by what he thinks is his own physical perfection. He's basically built his whole identity around that image staring back at him.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Listen to the guy himself. I mean, you can just feel the pride, right? He doesn't just think he's good-looking. He's convinced he is the most handsome in the entire forest. And notice the words he uses. His chest isn't just a chest, it's a symbol of my power. And those horns? Their whole job is to impress people. It is all about the outside. Let's dig into this whole chest thing for a second. To him, it wasn't just a part of his body. Having a broad, powerful chest was a sign of strength, of dominance. Think of it like a billboard he carries around advertising how mighty he is. He valued the look of power more than any actual practical use for it. It's kind of like a flashy car or a designer watch. It's a status symbol that's just meant to be seen. And that word, impress, that's the real key to how he sees the world. See, his self-worth, it's not coming from inside. Nope, it's all about getting validation from the outside. His goal isn't to be strong, it's to look strong. His value in his own head comes from the awe he hopes to see in the eyes of other animals. And that's a pretty fragile way to build your identity.
But here's the flip side of all that vanity. For all the pride he had in his chest and horns, he felt just as much shame for his legs and hooves. He calls them narrow and ugly. He says they do not satisfy him. Why? Because they just don't fit into the grand, powerful image he's so desperate to project to the world. He gets really hung up on his legs being narrow, thin, maybe even a little spindly. In his mind, which is all about looks, they seemed weak. They didn't match his powerful chest. They were a flaw in his otherwise perfect self-portrait. But, oh man, as we're about to see, reality is about to come crashing in and completely wreck his definition of perfection. So just when you think this deer is going to stare at himself all day, everything changes. The deer's peaceful day of self-admiration is shattered. Reality shows up in the form of a sudden, very real threat, and the story takes a huge, dramatic turn. All his ideas about his own value are about to be put to the ultimate test. He has to stop looking and start running for his life. It all happens in an instant. One clumsy moment, a sleeping dog wakes up, and boom, the passive admirer of beauty suddenly becomes the active prey. And just like that, his whole theoretical world of appearances and impressions, it's gone. It's been replaced by the brutal, heart-pounding reality of a life-or-death chase. And listen to the raw power of the language here. It's not just fear. It is pure terror. He screams. In this one single moment of panic, all his pride, all his vanity, it just evaporates. All that matters now is one thing: survival. He refuses to become a victim, so his only option is to run, to flee deep into the forest. And let's be really clear about what this kind of terror does. We're not just talking about being a little nervous here. This is an overwhelming primal fear that just shuts down every other thought. All his vanity, his concerns about how he looked, poof, gone. In this moment of pure survival, the deer couldn't care less about how handsome he looks. Terror has a way of making things crystal clear, doesn't it? So his motivation is super simple now. He just does not want to be a victim. That one thought is all that's driving him. All that matters is preventing a terrible, awful fate. This primal need to escape is what sends him deep into the forest. And it's this very chase that's going to teach him the greatest lesson of his life. Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting and delivers its brilliant twist. The chase completely flips the deer's entire value system on its head. Everything he thought he knew about his own strengths and weaknesses is about to be proven definitively and very dangerously wrong. And this slide just lays it out perfectly, the huge irony of the story.
The things he was so proud of, his big chest and beautiful horns, they become dangerous liabilities. They're actual obstacles getting in his way. And meanwhile, the things he was ashamed of, his ugly, narrow legs and hooves, they suddenly become his only hope. They're his lifesavers. So let's really picture this chase, okay? As he's darting through the thick woods, that powerful chest he loves so much, now it's too wide to squeeze between the trees, and it's slowing him down. And those impressive horns, the ones that looked so great out in the open, they become a tangled mess in the low branches, snagging him, holding him back. But his legs, his thin, narrow legs, they are powerful, they are fast, and they are carrying him forward.
And you gotta remember, the ground here isn't some nice smooth path. It's a rough, uneven mess of rocks and roots. And this is where those ugly hooves he hated so much, this is where they became superstars. They were hard, they were tough, and they were perfectly designed to grip this difficult terrain and give him the stability he needed to keep going, even while his beautiful features were actively working against him.
So, the deer makes it. He escapes. And he just collapses in the shade. The physical chase might be over, but this is where the really important mental journey begins. Safe for the moment, out of breath and terrified, he has this incredible moment of clarity. And you can just imagine him panting, heart-pounding, saying, "That was almost a disaster." He plays the chase back in his head and realizes the terrifying truth. The parts of him he adored, his chest and horns, they almost got him killed. And the parts he hated, his legs and hooves, they're the only reason he's still alive. I mean, what a wake-up call, right?
And when he says disaster, he is not being dramatic. He was seconds away from a really bad end. He realizes that his vanity, his obsession with looks over function, it had blinded him to what was truly important for survival, and it was almost a fatal mistake. Sometimes the best lessons come from the disasters we just barely avoid.
This is the moment he finally gets it. He sees the direct consequence of his choices. The result of putting appearance first was nearly death. It wasn't just bad luck, it was a direct outcome of his priorities. It's a really harsh lesson for sure, but man, was it effective. This is the turning point for him.
So this whole terrifying ordeal, it doesn't just leave him scared, it completely changes him. It leads to a profound transformation. He sheds his old, superficial values and develops a brand new kind of confidence, one that's resilient and based on what he can do, not just how he looks. You can really break down his whole mental shift into these 4 steps. First, there's the shock of that near disaster. Then, second, he understands the real consequence of his pride. Third, he learns to honor his legs and hooves. And by that, I mean he learns to really, truly respect them. He doesn't see them as ugly anymore. He sees them as powerful, life-saving tools. And all of that leads to the final step, real confidence.
And what comes out of this is a totally different kind of confidence. It's not that fragile pride he had before, the kind that needed other people to tell him he was great. This is true confidence. It's an internal certainty. He is now sure of what he's capable of, not just how he looks. He finally values his true strength.
So, this fable leaves us with a pretty provocative question for our own lives. What are your ugly hooves? What are the traits or skills, or maybe even past struggles that you tend to overlook or even dislike, but are actually the source of your greatest, most reliable strengths? Seriously, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if this explainer helped you see things a little differently, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown. Thanks for watching.